You recently warned that the 2026 World Cup is going to be the biggest fraud event in history because it's the first one running on AI. With synthetic identities operating at scale and spoofed login pages pulling real branding straight from FIFA's own CDN, how should risk teams prepare for a threat environment where every known fraud tactic is firing at once?
It's wild. It's a wild time because the impressions and the views that people see for the World Cup is about a month long, is a Super Bowl every single day worth of scale and volume, which is insane to really even think about. I focused in my career on the decade of space around the awful side of businesses so people can focus on the good sides. So I focus on the 2% of the business that people get abused by. With that now comes opportunities to educate. Everybody's excited for the World Cup, even if you're not a soccer or football fan of your country. The just sports just being sports has a whole just draw to that. Marketing, creative, storytelling. However, like I said, there's another side of the World Cup that can get dark. And criminals know that. With opportunities, people are vulnerable. The ability to spin up new sites. Think about it in the marketing world. You just spin up a new site, a new form. Like, it's so easy now. Copy this. I really like this brand. Hey, Mr. LLM, Mrs. LLM, do this for me, but use our branding in this. So easy. So if you think about all the scam texts you're getting, the scam calls you're getting, it's so easy to replicate that using the voice agents out there. Translating this text with perfect grammatical context and written behavior for whatever region of the world you're in. There's so many nuances to language. Well, LLMs know that. It's no longer that crumpled up piece of paper with poor English that you got in the mail from the Nigerian prince. The scale and simplicity to execute this is so easy. And that goes into fake jerseys, ticket scams, fake Airbnb listings, to stolen identities, to the really dark side of human trafficking. So there really isn't a crime or scam or fraud tactic that's off the table with this because the scale so big. It's really easy right now to create misinformation. And you know what? You think you're inputting information or you're buying those $10,000 tickets, and all of a sudden it's just a form and you input your personal information. You're putting in maybe additional information for traveling or visas that you should not be putting out there. So if you're unaware of some of the tactics out there, it's very easy to end up on a site that has FIFA in the domain, looks just like FIFA, whatever subgenre you may be, and accidentally input things or think you bought something and it never shows up.
How do you even prepare for anything like that? It can't just be awareness. What can actually be done for risk teams to mitigate?
There's going to be different industries. So you have the travel industry, you have the ticketing industry, you have the retail industry. So each one of these industries, you have the financial institutions, that's going to be like moving money or the Venmos. Each one of them look at a piece or a sliver of this entire criminal operation, and different criminal operations will focus on different segments. So you're just kind of creating your baselines, you're understanding what types of abuse can happen on your platform, what controls you have in place, what data you have, what data you're missing, and you've got better figure out how to get pretty quick to help put stronger controls in place. And then now it becomes the balance of like, what can your team actually handle for the workload? Can you leverage AI today? Sometimes in controlled niche spaces that are super regulated, like fraud, risk, and compliance, it's hard to move fast to get a new tool up and running. It's not like, for me now, moving a little bit deeper on the event and marketing side for these people, I can build way more for myself to help myself in the day-to-day have extreme output. But on the fraud and compliance side, there's
Limitations.
Risk and of what you can and can't do. There's no really true path into the space. So more often than not, most people aren't technical. So when it comes to that, aren't willing to put themselves in the risk place to ultimately build something that breaks everything or puts your company at risk or opens up these loopholes for criminals to test on. Because just like with AI, they're using it to scrape companies, to build out new websites, see what vulnerabilities are there, and collect all feedback and data. Like that post you called out, some of these people have been buying domains for over a year, maybe even 2-3 years, knowing that
ahead of it.
We know when the World Cup
coming
is.
down the
We know when it's coming. We know where it's located. We might not know all the sites, but we know which country's hosting it, and we know the the tentative dates of the overall tournament, so I can buy a lot of this. And I can say, well, Fanatics is going to be in this game. I can probably get an Airbnb. What are the risks? How can I take advantage of these different businesses? And then you just run your agents across that just from a criminal operation, doing kind of competitive intelligence. On like the marketing sales side, you might be looking at your direct competitors of what they do, how they're pricing. Criminals are going to be looking at that for all these different industries of, well, how can I steal someone's personal data, or how can I make a quick buck off this?
Doesn't seem like there's a good answer for it. It sounds more like just awareness and being much more careful for the next 6 weeks or for the duration of the World Cup. Just like really digging in.
The hard part is the consumer side. Is you might get notifications from Venmo or your bank being, be aware of the scam, look out for these things, don't click weird links, don't answer the phone call. Like, you get numb as a consumer.
Hide for a month
and you
and a
feel
half.
like, well, it's not going to happen to me. But it's the spoofs, the dupes, and the tactics are getting cleaner and faster. It just takes you to wake up tired. And you're like, I'm exhausted, and I just click the link, not really paying attention. And then you're starting to open up additional risk within all of that. So the hard part as a retailer is you might have great controls in place, but the human side is still the most vulnerable piece to all of this. And if the consumer's numb, if the consumer doesn't think it's going to happen to them, like, how do you educate a consumer effectively to make them listen to you one too many? I mean,
you can't pull their ear.
That goes into your email marketing. How's that fit into your email marketing campaigns? Is that worth the spot there? Do we build out pages on the product page? Is it worth pulling engineers and product off that? What's the impact of all this? So all of this are trade-offs also happening behind the scenes of, is this worth a bet for my understaffed team to say, I need an email campaign, when I could be focusing and trying to fight for additional resources for another project? All trade-offs to all of it. It's hard.
Moving on to the operational spotlight that I had here. You highlighted a massive operational blind spot in the industry. For every $1 merchants lose to fraudulent chargebacks, they process $20 in refunds. If just 3% of identities are driving 50% of all refund value, why are so many companies still treating refund abuse as a customer service issue? And how do leaders need to rebuild their priority list to actually isolate that 3%?
So this number came from a giant payment processor in the space, Adyen, came from their research report. So that is just a piece that the last couple of years, there's been different attention moving down line for fraud and risk teams on different nuances of fraud. Historically, it's been the front door account opening. If you're at a e-commerce site, it just might be an email. And it's like Brian, and then Brian plus one, Brian M, Brian D, Brian M plus one. You try to spin up all these different variations so you can keep getting that free trial or not pay for something. And then on a bank account, it's identity theft, synthetic identities of, I want to open up a business bank account or a bank account. Well, I'm not going to ask for your SSN to open up a subscription-based bit, but if you're opening up a mortgage, you probably hope that no one can take out a mortgage in your name just because they put an email that sort of kind of looks like yours, and the mortgage company's only taking an email at face value. So there's different types of friction that are worth it in some industries. That's account open. Then the other place has been at the transaction, money movement. So when you go to Amazon, you check out, you put your card in, that it lets you make the purchase, and it denies it when I try to make a purchase using your information. Criminals know that. Friendly fraud has been tactics that have been shown way more on social media. So the fuel of social media, criminal influencers, or friendly fraud influencers, friendly fraud being like, hey, I didn't think it was going to bill through. I'm just going to tell them I've never heard of Amazon, and then I'm going to get my money back. I'll file a dispute with my bank. You're the customer to the bank, so then the bank's like, well, I'm going to trust Brian. He doesn't really do this much. I'm not going to push back. And then the merchant, the retailer, Amazon, is out fighting for that, being like, well, we had all the information. So as better controls in different areas increase and the customer experience is optimized for the risky side and the customer side, the true customer side, people look for other areas to get their money back. It could be buyer remorse. It could be, I got a wedding. It's a really expensive dress that I have to wear. I'm going to wear it one time. I'm never going to wear it again. I'm going to keep the tags on, and then I'm going to buy it and return it. That's a type of return abuse. things that some people might say, it's okay. But if that starts to spread and people share, well, you can wear the dress and return it, and you'll get credits, you can use it more, you can sell the credits. Then there becomes, now how do people abuse this? As we get better at payment fraud and preventing that and only allowing accounts open that should be open downstream, now where do people go? They know that, all right, if I type in and I respond to whatever the chatbot is and I click XYZ, it'll give me a refund and I just got to drop it off at UPS. Criminals know how to abuse that. They can then open up fake accounts, steal credit cards, and then find ways to monetize and get maybe the product for free or money back out of that was never theirs to begin with. So the combination of the two of those and that process, refunds usually being handled by an e-commerce team, the maybe sometimes marketing team, the customer support team. A lot of them are incentivized by fast SLAs, high NPS, and increased revenue. So they're incentivized to make the customer feel special in the fastest amount of time, which opens up risks of, is this a return that should have happened? Criminals learn different tactics like that of what is the return process? What needs to happen in order for me to get money back? So again, there's so many different ways to find and abuse companies, which is why turning to ways like return abuse, people who buy things, use it and return it, don't really feel like they're creating any harm at that point, but it is a tactic, it is abuse, it is considered fraud. People just might not see themselves as a criminal. So there's the good people who see themselves as good, and then you have the criminals who are just doing that because they know they can get money or free product. So the two of them together ultimately ends up being the issue. So then the percentage base, you usually see organized crime or organized identities or different blocks centered around specific schemes like that, which then ties to a few identities ultimately pushing up that percentage. And when you look at it at their view, where they have many merchants, many retailers, it might be Brian maybe not hitting up Amazon every time, but Brian's tied to Amazon, Nike, Adobe,
Walmart,
whatever it may be. So this one identity is tied to a scheme across many merchants that the merchant themselves says, 1, 2, 3 returns, it's fine. But when you look at the grand scheme of across the entire payments network, I'm doing some damage.
Brian, who's someone you're following on LinkedIn that we should know more about?
If you want to go into the fraud space, David Mayman is one. He's a professor at Georgia State. It's like a cyber education, but a lot of his teachings is how to monitor the dark web, how to do threat intelligence of what tactics are being used. He's one. And then another one, Frank McKenna, he's a co-founder at a company in the space. He writes a good newsletter within the space around just what's happening and has really been focusing on AI. But for the past year, he's been trying to get scammed 1,000 different ways. So he is taking on risk himself to understand different tactics criminals are using and then teaching others the different tactics that are used within some of these schemes. So those are two people without a doubt.
That is really interesting. Is that something that you would sign up for? Try to get scammed 1,000 ways just to learn and teach people?
I think at this point, your number's out there. Everything's out there at this point. I don't know if I'd sign up for it per se because the upper limit is pretty costly.
Yeah.
If someone opens up multiple mortgages in my name or defaults on a mortgage I had no idea was in it.
That happened to you?
No, but it is something that has and will continue to happen. And identity theft is no joke if it actually happens to you. And usually it's pretty hard to actually remediate the situation for yourself on the consumer side.
That is something
pretty scary. When you open up to this side of the world, most people honestly, which shouldn't be a surprise once you get a little bit deeper and deeper, most people don't make it in this space after a couple years because you're unlocked to a lot of the bad side of the business. So
man.
I started with hair, working in the space, I lost all my hair.
You become so numb to like how shitty the world is, right?
You're
it's
just
like
focused on all of that.
Damn it. It's like, you think, okay, as long as I'm not a Facebook moderator. Or like, you know what I mean?
Spin into all of this. Content moderation, misinformation, the communications to all these platforms. It plays a piece in the rest of all of the ecosystem. It's a tactic to get people to either spreading it, so then picks up more traction, more people see it, then you click through it, or you message someone, you engage with it. There's social intent and social listeners to all of this as well. A lot of the marketing tactics that people use, criminals use a lot of those same psychological behaviors and triggers and research to ultimately use against vulnerable populations to take abuse of them.
Dude, I would have never thought that someone in your space would say something like, yeah, a lot of people don't stay in it very long because of what they're exposed to.
It's hard. It's hard
for people to learn. Right?
I've never worked into them, but if you work within, like you brought up content, the types of content written, types of images created or found. I worked in one company along the way. We were like an Audible competitor. And one of our biggest things, we had a lot of user-generated content and documents. It was always uploaded. We had about 20,000 docs uploaded per day. I managed the team. I didn't have to run the queue itself, but I had people that were kind of like QAing our spam and scam detection algo.
So you have to get in there. Yeah.
They had to review a lot of the content. A lot of it is just like nonsense, maybe just like people button mashing. But then there's a lot of CSAM and lots of like Epstein file lists type of stuff of like what you think about the worst of the worst of the worst of the worst. Like some content moderators, especially Meta, gets a lot of heat for what they allow and what they see, but there are huge teams that are really only focused on that. And that's one of the platforms that see the scale that are like unreal.
You can't even imagine the scale. So they're comparatively, based on what they ingest, you can't say they're doing a bad job. People think they do, but if you're in it,
so
you're like...
even if it's just like a small percentage that is able to get through, or a lower risk percentage to the extreme that they see, a lot of it is now automated for them, but they still have people who are ultimately checking it, reviewing it, like QAing to make sure that any new pieces that are getting through, but that takes a toll on a human.